So let's talk about the power of encouragement. Imagine yourself in this situation. You're driving home in your car, and suddenly in your rearview mirror, you see a police car with blue lights flashing, and it's following you. So anxiously, you pull over and you wonder what you did wrong. You're going to notice your rapid heartbeat, the perspiration that forms in your palms, your dry mouth, and the policeman approaches your car window and asks for your driver's license. He looks at the license, then at you, and says, I've been on the force for 12 years, and it's always a pleasure to see a courteous driver. I pulled you over so I could congratulate you on the fine driving skills that you have and that you showed back there in traffic tangles on the freeway overpass. If every driver were as considerate as you, we could avoid lots of snarls and headaches. So I just wanted to say thanks. What do you think your reaction would be to the policeman's comment? You would feel good about yourself and a little proud. You'd feel like you're a pretty good driver. You would feel encouraged to drive more courteously and considerate in the future. And you'd almost faint from the shock. Chances are that the last one would be your strongest reaction. We just don't expect to receive such compliments from authority figures. And yet, after the shock is worn off, you'd probably feel good about yourself, thinking that you're a pretty good driver and you feel encouraged to drive more courteously and considerately in the future. And that's an example of the power of encouragement. With only a few words, that policeman increased your self-esteem and gave you a boost to your confidence and created the likelihood that you would drive even better in the future. No wonder some people call encouragement the subtle giant. The downside of encouragement is that in every opportunity to encourage our children, as well as ourselves and other people, there's also an opportunity to discourage them, because most of us are not natural-born encouragers. We need to work out at recognizing our own discouraging tendencies while strengthening our ability to encourage. But before we look further at encouragement, let's consider its opposite, discouragement, and the way that it affects our children's behaviors. So the misbehaving child is usually a discouraged child. Somewhere along the line, she lost the courage to face life's problems with positive behavior, because negative behavior is easier and it doesn't come with the risk of failure. And so that child becomes or starts to believe that it's the only path open to her. And so referring again back to that think, feel, do cycle, when a parent says or does something that discourages a child, which is the event, it tends to lower the child's self-esteem, which is the think part. And that leads to the discouragement, which is the feeling, which leads to the do of the negative behavior. And this may prompt the parent to become even more punishing and discouraging, and then the cycle spirals downward. So to avoid this pattern, we have to do our best to stop discouraging our children and instead become more encouraging and be that event that encourages in their think, feel, do cycle. So first, we have to be able to recognize when and how we might be discouraging our children. Although abuse and neglect are the most serious forms of discouragement, we're going to focus our attention on 4 less obvious but extremely common ways that parents can discourage their children and how each of these can be turned into a method of encouragement. So if the discouraging event is overprotection and pampering, we might try stimulating independence. If we find ourselves focusing on mistakes, then we can start by building on strengths. If we're expecting too little of our children, we can show confidence in them. And if we're expecting too much, like perfectionism, we can start valuing the child as is. So, independence, this is essential for thriving in our modern society. In fact, when we keep our children overly dependent on us, not only do they pay a price, but so do we. As psychologist Chaim Guinnot wrote, dependence breeds hostility. Overprotecting and pampering does not lead to the appreciation that parents may expect. It leads to resentment. Anything that keeps our children overly dependent on us works against our job as parents. And that's to work ourselves out of a job. So we want to avoid pampering our child. When parents put themselves into their child's service or otherwise treat the child like a privileged character, the child eventually becomes dependent, spoiled, and discouraged. We also want to avoid overprotecting your child. When parents tell their children that the world is too dangerous and difficult for them, and they try to protect the child from both danger and also failure by handling things for them, the child's going to come to believe that they're incapable of handling things for themselves. And since they never learn to solve their own problems, they don't really get the opportunity to make mistakes and experience the consequences and learn from them. So some signs of pampering and overprotecting your child include calling them more than once to get up in the morning, routinely driving them places on short notice, picking out their clothes, giving them money on demand instead of an allowance, allowing them to curse and speak disrespectfully to you, not monitoring their media, the TV, the music, the movies, the internet, etc., making their homework your responsibility, often letting them eat meals in front of the TV, always cleaning up after them, not requiring them to help with family chores, or saying things like, sure, I'll be glad to talk to your teacher. I'm sure when she realizes how hard you worked, she'll change your grade. Or I shouldn't have to call you 3 times to get up in the morning, but at least you're getting to school on time. So in short, if you're doing these things for your child on a regular basis that they could do for themselves, if you're often rescuing them from the consequences of their behavior, you are pampering and overprotecting your child, and it's time to stop. Let them know that you're going to start treating them more respectfully, and you can do this in a firm but friendly way. So, take responsibility for yourself while still encouraging your child. So you can say something like, you know what, I want to apologize for treating you like you don't have good sense to get yourself up in the morning. So from now on, I'm going to stop treating you like a baby and leave it up to you. Or, you know what, I don't use that kind of language when I'm angry with you, and I don't expect you to use it when you're angry with me. Or I'll be glad to show you, where the dirty clothes go, but from now on, I'm only washing the clothes that get put there. We also want to help our child develop a sense of interdependence. Life in our diverse modern society is neither independent nor dependent. It's interdependent. So learning to work cooperatively with others is a key to success for both the individual and humankind as a whole. So we want to encourage the child to experience the pleasure and the benefits of group efforts. We could say things like, you're an important part of this family and we'd like your ideas at family meetings. Or, why don't you come up on the sofa and snuggle with us? Or, would you like to make lasagna with us? We also have to allow for the natural consequences to teach. So in lesson 3, we learned that natural consequences can be really great teachers, and they can be particularly effective for teaching independence. But we don't want to forget that natural consequences are not always a good choice for discipline. And we'll talk about that in a little while, or we already talked about that when I was discussing how we can't use natural consequences to teach. Giving children an allowance to spend how they choose is going to stimulate their interdependence by teaching them responsibility with money. Plus, it's going to give a great response to the age-old question that every parent hates to hear. Can I have that doll? Can I have that game? Or that candy bar, or whatever I just saw advertised on TV, and you can just simply respond with, hey, that's what your allowance is for. And the flip side of allowance is chores. So requiring your children to do their fair share of household chores is going to encourage them to become more interdependent and more responsible. And everybody likes to contribute to the well-being of their family, even those who don't know it yet, So it's just going to increase their feelings of significance and belonging, and it's going to build skills and boost their self-esteem. And chores and allowances, they go well together. Together, they're going to teach kids that, all of us share in the work of running this family, and that all of us share in the resources of this family. So some tips to make allowances and chores more effective are to pick an allowance based on your child's age. We recommend that you start giving weekly allowances when your child's around 6 or 7. And that's, when children typically begin developing the ability to think abstractly, which is what's necessary in order to grasp the concept of money. So select the amount that's based on, what you expect the allowance to cover, and then plan to increase it annually. So we have to determine what that allowance is going to cover. So with young kids, just tell them that this is their money to spend however they would like, and let them know, that you're still going to pay for all their regular needs. But allowances for the extra things that they may want but don't necessarily need. And as they're getting older, discuss what allowance should cover in more detail, increasing the amount to cover things like entertainment, meals out with parents, extra clothing, etc. And don't tell them how to spend their money, except in like matters of health or safety or family values. Otherwise, just let the natural consequences of spending money unwisely do the teaching. It's better to learn now with small kid-size purchases than later when they might spend a fortune on an overpriced whatever. Fill in the blank here with your own personal experience, because we have all had them. And don't pay your kids to do chores. It can be tempting to do this, but it's better to keep allowances and chores separated. And if your child wants to earn extra money, you can quote unquote hire them to do jobs for you personally, like shining your shoes or washing your car. That's in addition to their regular chores. And we can use discipline skills as necessary, rather than giving allowance as a reward for completing chores or withholding allowance as a punishment for forgetting their chores. You can use the discipline skills that you learned in lesson 3 to help the kids to remember to do their chores. So, a logical consequence that effectively combines chores and allowances, if a child forgets to do their chore by the agreed upon time, anybody else in the family can do it for them, and the child who forgot must pay the other person an agreed upon amount. That's logical because adults also have to pay others to do our work if we choose not to do it ourselves. We can also let the kids participate in choosing the chores. Rather than dictating chores to your children, hold a family meeting to determine which chore needs to be done and who's going to do it. Encourage the kids to choose chores that they can reasonably do. Make sure someone writes all of that down, though. We also want to rotate chores from time to time. Children are going to be less resistant to accepting the less pleasant chores if they know that they're only going to have to do it for a short time. If they think that they're going to be stuck taking out the garbage and changing the kitty litter forever, they may grow up to resent people and write parenting books. So teach your child how to do a chore the way that you expect it to be done. Don't just assume that your child knows how to do something because you know how to do it. It could be a perfect opportunity to use the bank method, and I'll describe that in a little while in another lesson. And you're going to find more helpful guidelines in the teaching skills family enrichment activity. But above all, keep it encouraging. And then we also want to encourage savings. So give your child a piggy bank or help them open a savings account, and then sit down and talk about the importance of saving money for more expensive things, rather than just blowing it all on impulsive purchases. And you can encourage this further by offering to contribute a percentage of their savings towards a worthwhile goal, like a car or, if they're trying to buy a new laptop or something like that. And then we want to encourage giving some to charity. Help your kids use some of their own money to give to charitable causes. You may want to have a family meeting about giving and then plan what they want to contribute and to where, and then they're going to feel better about giving if it's their own choice and if they get to pick the cause that they support. Again, be sure to encourage their giving for generosity, just for generosity's sake. My children, one day I realized how much I was spending on Christmas presents, and I was like, this is not happening anymore. So I spoke to the kids and I said, instead of giving you this $100 in gifts this year, I'm still going to buy you some Christmas presents, but $100 of what I would have spent, I'm going to give you that cash, and you are going to give this away to someone in need. You can buy Christmas presents for a child in need. You can tip the waitress extra money. You can pay somebody's utility bill. There's Christmas wish lists at church or on the internet or on, various radio stations out there that do Christmas wish lists, and you can pick somebody and sponsor their family that year. but this $100 can't go towards you. And so it's become quite a Christmas tradition. We went out and fed the homeless people in the city of Atlanta, and the kids were able to contribute money towards buying them the sandwiches, or buying some napkins, or buying some extra mayonnaise to throw in the packets, or whatever. So encourage them to generously give and give outrageously.